for the last 4 years, what's been coming out as content for the talks that I give, for the work that I do, or teachings, if we call it that, in some circles, that's what it's called. What has come out has been what's deeper than non-duality. And I've been intrigued on a personal, Jack level. Why are we setting up non-dual as a goal? What the heck is that? It's just a really important phase, but it's a stepping stone in a much broader trajectory. What's going on that so many teachers, colleagues of mine, reject the idea that there's something more? And it's just been a question sitting there. And this year, little eurekas started to show up, and I would like to share that with you. Let's move on. From duality to the non-dual awakened state. All right. Every spiritual teaching is going to help you. Go to the observer, go to the I am, go to the I, rest there. Then what is the same and everything becomes your primary mode of perception, and the lens of what sees diversity comes in and out. Your new position is the non-dual state, and diversity comes in and out, rather than diversity is your normal point of perception, and you remember unity consciousness, you remember the truth. So waking up is when the shift happens, and the non-dual state is the dominant one. For some reason, it feels more authentic, more accurate, more honest than the dualistic perception. Prior to the non-dual state, there is actually a thing called prior to consciousness, which I've been talking a little bit about in the last couple of years. The amount of resistance that I've received has been phenomenal. Phenomenal! Because no, the great masters have said there is nothing except mind prior to the non-dual state. It must be just more mind. Don't go there, it's dangerous. One teacher who's actually here told me it's dangerous to go beyond the non-dual state. And when I hear something like that, I kind of take it away, because my MO is like, am I missing something? Am I missing something? And I would invariably think, okay, I'll try on that and see if it fits. It takes me a little while, and then I'm going, no. There's something off. The investigation continues. There's a stagnation. There's an attachment to the non-dual state. So I started to look, all right, okay, what are the symptoms of this stagnation? There is loads of shallow awakenings all over the internet. People spouting these teachings, and they just grabbed a little bit here, grabbed a little bit there, and it's from the neck up. So I used to call it neck up awakenings, and now I found, okay, it's just shallow. Maybe there's a cerebral shift, but has the real work happened? Not at all. Has any emotional content been explored? Can they go into the heart? Is there an understanding? Is there wisdom? Not at all. So the shallow awakenings are a symptom of this stagnation. But the stagnation is among the teachers. It's among us, the teaching community. Because the more honest we are, the more open we are, the more open students will be. And whatever comes from our students, it's a reflection of what's going on in the teacher. It works two ways. As long as you have the non-dual jargon and a website, and now Twitter and Facebook page, you can teach. You can teach. And friends tell each other, you should be teaching. That stuff that you said, I heard it. I only remember Maharsha speaks like that. Or Advaita is the only one who speaks like this. And then we just have people, yes, the teaching happened automatically, and it's, wow. So we have no system at all of what is it? What is it that actually constitutes a full awakening? What is it? We don't even have the language for a shallow awakening, a deep awakening. When is it okay for somebody to actually guide somebody else? We don't know. We have no standards, no transparency at all in this sector. As a result, there's a lot of poor quality guidance given to seekers. Spiritual wisdom is not cultivated. It seems to be out of fashion. And by spiritual wisdom, discernment, hanging on to your own authority, checking to see. It's like an example I gave a few minutes ago. If somebody said, a teacher says something, or somebody else says something to me, and I'm like, I'll try it on for a while. Because what I'm doing is I'm checking in my own authority. I'm not hitting it back, rejecting, because maybe I can grow here. Maybe I can see something new that I haven't seen before. That kind of practice is discernment. Trial and error is how you practice discernment. Stepping back, seeing what's going on for me here. Is there any stickiness at all? Cultivate spiritual wisdom within yourself. Cultivate discernment. Cultivate your own authority, not out of arrogance, but out of honesty and out of integrity within yourself. If you don't have those values, develop them. Honesty, integrity. When teachings deny the importance of personal growth, it becomes a block for both teachers and students. There is a place for doing the work. Some teachings are the direct path. That doesn't mean that the work is not necessary. The direct path teachings is a technique to just make your mind, oh, there's only that. There's no path. So it makes you disconnect from the attachment to a path, the attachment to a teacher, because there's nothing to cling to when you get teachings that are from the direct path. It's a technique. You still have to dig out your own crap. You still have to do it. Cultural contexts need to be explored so we can see what influences have created the current stagnation. The culture of awakened teachers, let's look at that, my own tribe. When awakening becomes integrated first, a yes comes out before a no. I remember in the early days, a request to go to Poland, go to Timbuktu, go here, do a weekend here, and yes would come. It's like, a yes always comes, yes always comes. This has happened to a lot of teachers. For the first few years after awakening, there's something that responds. And it really is because we didn't have the space, the time, the integration time to develop that kind of discernment to know, is this the divine flow going in this direction? It's like that inner voice hadn't risen up enough. Pure consciousness wasn't talking loud enough. And so a request from the outside drew forth a response, and the response is wide open, because your system is wide open when you awaken. There's nothing to hide, there's no protection mechanism, because there's no separation. So there's no threat to your safety. So a yes comes up. But until you can feel the movement of consciousness, you will say yes to no matter what whim comes from the outside. And I landed myself in the soup so many times. I'm like, what's going on? But it was that I wasn't mature enough to hear. If I had bought some time and said, I'll get back to you on that. But instead what happened was a yes arose. Before, there was a knowing that, stop, listen, see what's the reply here. If I had bought some time, I'll get back to you in a week. But I didn't know that that's what was going on. These kind of things need to be taught also. But we're just learning, and we're all making the same mistakes. In other cultures, what happens is that the community supports the awakened one. You were traditionally in a monastery, or you're in an ashram, or you're in some kind of a spiritual community. So you're housed, you're protected, you're cosseted while this integration phase goes on. But for the rest of us, we're plonked out in the marketplace. It's not easy. We're learning the hard way. Let's find some forum or some way of saying, you don't gotta make the same mistakes as I did and get kicked around the place for years and and living on divine providence and just using lofty ideas to try and make it back in the marketplace? How do you integrate the marketplace with the lofty ideas that are so accessible to you when you're in the non-dual state? That's fine if you have an ashram to protect you, but we don't. We have to westernize this in some way and help each other to understand what it's like in our culture, in our context. Implicit trust happens a lot when you wake up. It's like, because you trust everything, there's nothing to not trust. So there's just the flow. You know that you're not doing it. You've given up the idea of your own life and your own goals a long time. So what happens is that there's just trust that the flow is fine. And even if somebody, you know, breaks into your house, well, it's fine. It actually is fine. Some part of you knows it's totally fine. But if you're living in the world, there needs to be some authority that returns, that says, hold on here. Can I bring in the dualistic lens to deal with an issue in the world and not leave the non-dual state? How can I manage in the world? Is my trust going to be threatened in some way? Because the trust is completely implicit. I know there's some story about Ramana Maharshi where he was, in the early days of the ashram, there himself and 3 or 4 disciples were living in a grass hut. And somebody came in and beat him up and took the few coins that they had. And, you know, he used it as a teaching to say, he's just working out his karma. He's just working out his karma. I don't mind how much he beat me up. You can beat me up more. And he said that during the violence. Beat me up more, it's fine. It's fine. You're just working out your karma. Come on, go for it. That doesn't work in our culture. And to adopt that from there to here, teachings don't readily plop from the Eastern tradition to our world. And so the trust in the divine play has been used by a lot of us to have an absence of boundaries, to accept practices that are actually not in integrity at all, but that there's something, it'll work itself out. Sometimes it won't. And for us to have the discernment as teachers to know what is of the world, where is the dualistic lens of perception of good, ethical, clear, honest integrity at play, and where is just the knowing of pure consciousness working itself out? Where is that to be left alone to do its thing? I don't have that one worked out yet. I'm still smelling that. And it's been a good few years. And these are the kind of subtleties that living in the West puts right on your table. Social conflict is energetically uncomfortable when you wake up. Because the ego, the self-referencing mechanism puts an energy field around you. And you know how some people can feel Shakti, you can feel a vibration from awakened teachers, because that shell is gone. The ego that bounce things bounce off, that lens of perception that says I am an individual and I am separate. Once separation goes, you kind of merge with everything, because that's an energetic consequence of knowing that what is the same is much more authentic than the lens of separation that your mind does. So the sameness, the unity consciousness has an energetic component. And because your system is wide open, because the first one is how your energy field is once the ego totally breaks down, we automatically move away from conflict. There's no protective mechanism. And again, we don't have the world, the ashram, the monastery, the collective community to protect you. So there's an energetic difference which helps us to, again, avoid conflict, avoid resistance, the shadow. It's really uncomfortable energetically. But we've got to find some way of dealing with that, naming it, and sharing with each other to see, well, what happens? How do you deal with it? Because you don't take it personally, that's gone. But there's an energetic thing that's bloody awful. It's awful on your energy field. And it's just, okay, you've got to clear it, you've got to move it out because, you know, it's part of what you are, it's part of the whole lot. But still, it's an impact, and it does actually affect your health as well. This is something that's never named. Ancient cultural conditioning is in on the mix, adding to the stagnation. The archetypes from religion are in our psyche. It's too rich to ignore. Religious leaders held in high esteem. Most religious leaders, patriarchy. I've yet to see a non-dual speaker on her own in the main hall of this conference, even though I've been knocking on the door for years. I don't care if it's me or somebody else, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's just endemic in our culture. And I'm not blaming, I'm not naming, I'm saying here's an example. It's just an example of how patriarchy is so strong in all of our conditioning. Papal infallibility. I mean, gosh, really? That there's something outside of any kind of questioning? It's interesting that we have that concept. Another version of it is the guru model. And in India, you can be a saint before you die. And I know in Ireland, the culture is like, once somebody dies, nobody speaks bad about the person. Nobody speaks bad about the person. You know, it's kind of weird. It's like, but it's fine to bitch about somebody if they're alive. It's just bizarre. You know, like we have all these ways of codes of practice, codes of behavior in our culture that definitely influence the non-dual sector, the non-dual community. Then the feedback loop adds to this mix too. We've got the teacher. Somehow, of course, can we throw off all this conditioning, all this, you know, this years and years of me being influenced by Asia, by Ramana Maharshi, by all those ancient texts, coming to the West and like, whoa, it doesn't fit here, it doesn't fit here, and fumbling around trying to find a way, and it's like, actually I have to go right in and get married again. I have to go right in to clear all this stuff off. So we've got the teacher who's influenced by this. Then we've got the students who have their own way of promoting this. We feed off each other, no? There's a certain element of feeding off each other, of giving respect to the priest or to the teacher or to the one who's in authority in the community. So the spiritual, even if it's, you know, the doctor in a local community, certain people have a position of authority and then they're not confronted with anything. So there's an automatic respect. So how many of us as teachers can feel that respect, and what do we do with it? What do we do with it? Does it flow off us, or do we in some way actually enjoy it? Then there's goals. The non-duality is set up, that non-duality is set up as a goal. It's like, oh yeah, the awakened state. It's like a stepping stone, please, a station along the way that just keeps going and going and going as far as I can see. But we mind wants a goal, we love goals. And so, you know, suffering will be gone. The awakened state, that's what I want. It's just the rejection of the dualistic state to go to the non-dual state. It's just the flip side of the same coin. That's all it is. Really, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a much deeper phase of growth. It's the beginning of the subtleties and the discernment, and a whole new world opens up. But to see non-duality as a goal is another trap. It's another mind idea that has to be brought to the front to say, hey, throw out that too. Throw out that piece of conditioning too. Don't attach to that goal. If you want to be happy, set a goal that commands your thoughts, liberates your energy, and inspires your hopes. And when I Googled, like, okay, who talks about goals? Oh my God, there was a gazillion replies of the importance of goal setting and the importance of having a goal to give direction to your life. It's like, wow, it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. Anyway, it's bled into non-duality as well. Then we've got the market, because us as teachers haven't yet grappled with this contemporary non-dual movement. It's a sector, it's a movement. And because we're not westernizing it or making it cultural specific or pulling away what's not appropriate in order to help ourselves and help students, because we're not doing this, the market has regulated a huge amount. So the market is saying, you're already awake, there's nothing to do, you're all of it right now. Because we want everything now, instant now, everything is now. So that's bled into it. Make my life better, make my lifestyle more cool. So there we go, the goal, accumulate more, get more. Same thing with non-duality, get more peace. Get more peace, really? Do you know? But yet you'll find it boring once you get it. It's like... And the unending load of desires, which is just another thought. You want love, peace, yes, I want to have that open heart, and I want. It's like the desires are the problem. There's nothing to get, you know? Okay, I took 3 very short snippets. And again, these 3 snippets are from men. And I was like, why am I putting up men? And I'm like, really? Because I don't know women and what they teach. I don't know the ones that have come into my orbit are men. So here we go. I'm doing the very same thing as everything else is doing, is promoting male imagery. Anyway, so it's another piece of conditioning that's still running here, obviously. So the market has, when I was looking at like, what does the market do? And it's like, the path is roughly laid out like this. Roughly, it's not an exact science. Fill my mind with concepts, because concepts will shift my perception just a little bit. Makes you feel unlimited, makes you feel, you know, it's like, oh, just expand my mind a little bit to break down some limitations. 2 years ago. Are we an audio?
Held together by this invisible, non-atomic whatever it is, which leaves 4% of the universe, which is atomic. All that, 99.99999% is invisible interstellar dust, mostly hydrogen and helium, in fact all hydrogen and helium, that hasn't yet coalesced to form galaxies or stars.
So on that, Deepak gets a big cheer. It's just 2 years ago. And he gets a big cheer because he says, I see you as a piece of intergalactic dust. And it was beautiful how he brought them. It's like, oh my God, there's the mind, like, just shift my limitations. And that tends to be one of the first things in there. It's like, okay, just watch the hook at play. Then it's like, actually, I've kind of got to get used to the emptiness, because you're full of new concepts, be they new age, be they, oh, here's the technique, here's the mantra I use, here it is, let's accumulate more. And then we flip to the opposite. Oh.
30 seconds or so of just spacious being. You look out of the window, whatever you see there, feel yourself breathing, and you for a moment you break the momentum of the mind that otherwise pulls you along. So you shut the door, there you go, 30 seconds. Unless there's a real emergency, 30 seconds don't really make much difference. Or if you believe the mind, you will believe that you can't afford 30 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, so introducing 30 seconds of stillness, just to start the emptiness, just to make it safe to, like, there are spaces between my thoughts. We tend to go from there into, actually, all my attention is on my own need to be loved and accepted. And off we go, okay, maybe I gotta do a little bit of work. But the craving to be loved, you're going to get that too on the spiritual path.
You can still use your mind and still be no mind, you know? So please accept this blessing, if you may allow me to say, I love you, I send you all that is positive and beautiful. Everyone, I don't mind who, I'm not going to draw any distinction. Love to you, peace to you.
Everything has its place. The bells and whistles. I want to feel good, how can I make my life better, has the biggest appeal. Using the intellect to create shifts in perception. It tends to shift. This is what the market has done. Recognizing the space between concepts is like, okay, and mindfulness is becoming a little bit more mainstream to like slow it down. What's the space between concepts? And then we start like, oh gosh, you know, I'm not okay. I need to heal something. And the craving to feel loved and going someplace so you can have the experience of love until you discover, actually I just have to love myself and remove everything that's not of love. When we go from there, this is where the spiritual path actually begins. This is where the shadow awakenings happen. And this narrow path that not many walk at all, this is really what non-duality is about. Because it's not you doing it. There's something else taking over. There's something else that was there all the time, but you were just distracted following your own thoughts. And so all of the conditions and everything, you know, for a long time I ignored them. You know, the cultural context that I spoke of earlier. Because it's like, it doesn't matter. There's something else in charge anyway. But really what was happening was like, I wasn't able to place the cultural context within the trajectory of how the non-dual shows up in the dual. It's one seamless trajectory. And to use a spiritual sentence is another form of bypassing, if that's what we do, to ignore the practice of what happens in the sector and what we need to do in the non-dual sector to make it better for people, more authentic, to improve the quality of how we teach or what we teach. If you look at the non-dual against the dual, just randomly grabbed a few concepts, which seem to be generally out there. The non-dual absolute, the dual relative. The non-dual infinite, the dual evolving. The non-dual outside of time, the dual continuous growth. Being, but becoming in the dual. And then there seems to be this assumption that in the non-dual, because of all this, well, there is no shadow, there's just the absolute. You must be beyond the shadow side. And then the dual is the place to face the shadow, I'd like to throw that on its head. Just because, you know, the absolute, the outside of time, outside of space, and even prior to the non-dual, even when pure consciousness starts to break down, and it gets more and more refined, and you know, it goes from existence itself breaks down, even identification with the absolute, all of it breaks down. The post, prior, before, beyond, whatever word you want to use, the non-dual state, even there, shadow can occur. Even there. Are teachers beyond the shadow? Because there's been spiritual development over character development, I'd like to bring in the importance of character development again, because that's the play out of the non-dual state. We have no context to allow for the growth of the teacher. We don't have continuing ed. We don't have any forum for us to share. We don't call each other out on our blind spots. And I've had a lot of people who've, you know, come to me over the years saying, I was told this by, I can call names, but it, you know, it might be picked up in a dualistic way, and then I'll be da-da-da-da. But, you know, here it is again. Here it is again. What happens now? Do we call each other out or do we not? What do we do? When a student comes and they say, I was told this by so-and-so in 2011. And I went back and I said, it doesn't sit and it doesn't sit. And what am I going to do now with this? So I'm left with the question, because that teacher said it's grace, and it's not grace at all, it's something that the person needs to know exactly what it is and work on it. But because it's been put on the grace shelf, or the mystery shelf, these are the two classics. Oh, that's mystery. It's like, mystery is lack of understanding. Grace is, I don't know. I don't know. Try that. I don't know. Do you know? And we've no forum for saying, hey, look, I can tell you what was going on with that person, where you said it was grace. What I'd love to know is, Did the teacher know that they didn't know? What said it was grace? How deep was that answer? It's grace, it's mystery. Where did that come from? Do they know it came from their own conditioning? Because it couldn't have come from pure consciousness. It couldn't have, because it wasn't the answer. Does pure consciousness get it wrong? I don't think so. Maybe that's another conditioned belief that'll dissolve in the Jack person. I don't know. So here are the objections to what I'm talking about. It's too holistic to call out a teacher. There's nobody there to call out. Like, this is it, no? This is the stuff, like, you know, dual values do not apply to a teacher. The non-dual movement is regulated by consciousness, and there's the trust, you know? We have trust for that. And it's like, well, okay, where is the trust appropriate and where is it not appropriate? Where is it a cop-out for allowing bad practice? This, I think, is what's going on endemically in spiritual practice. I think there's an absence of courage. I'm trying to figure out what is it. Like, I was talking to Rick over lunch, you know, and Rick Archer, and he was saying, I'm going to just present it as questions, because he was talking about something similar this afternoon, about the ethical practice of spiritual teachers. I'm just going to raise it as questions in order to plant the seeds for the discussion. And I'm like, maybe I'm going to name names. Maybe I will. And he goes, oh. But I didn't. I came very close to it, and I didn't. So, is that an absence of courage? I don't know. I'll think about it tonight. I don't know. Where do we stop? Where is it productive? Where is it destructive? I don't know, because I'm just pushing out something. We're pushing out something new. We're all feeling it. A lot of us are feeling it. But I don't know what is the code of good practice here. And I have no problem putting my head on the block. It's kind of like what I do. I put my head on the block, I get chopped off, and somehow I resurrect myself again. And that's kind of the Jack story, you know? Maturing beyond the non-dual. This is what doesn't happen when teachers are supporting their shadow. I don't know if they know they have a shadow or not. That's what I want to know. But non-duality supports identification with the absolute. All identification must fall away. And even, you know, I say it a lot too, you are that. You're not anything. Drop identification. That has to go after the non-dual state. Identification still bleeds in. You swap out the personal for the absolute. It's still there. Like, why do you want to be anything? Really? What is it, this whole identification, attachment, anyway? Some grasping at immortality, or I don't know. It kind of stinks, you know? So, some reason I can't seem to get many teachers to see that why can you just introduce you are that, but actually that will fall away as well. And teachers, a lot of teachers don't seem to be there themselves. So I would question that attachment. And that's part of the shadow too. Consciousness itself then breaks down. But this is a big no-no according to Vedanta. At least Vedanta, consciousness does not break down. But if you look at other, I found something in Buddhist texts where they're talking about that. But actually, you know, at this stage of the game, I feel I'm cracking a match to every bit of sacred text that I've ever read. I really do. I just say, you know what? Forget it. My own experience is actually the most authentic, the #1 reference point, and that's what I would encourage everybody. Your own authority, your own integrity. And if you screw up, because what I believe now, I will quite likely throw it out in a few years' time. I welcome it. I totally welcome it. The teachings change all the time for this one. And that's just the name of the game. It's just how it rolls for me. Surely there must be some constant evolution that we all embrace. Surely, how I don't know how somebody can not want to continually evolve and become somehow a better person. Isn't that automatic in being human? Well, for me it is. It does feel like this. But we do have tools. And we are able to keep climbing. Something will keep going in spite of the resistance that will come from talking about things like this, the lashback that will come. It's like, keep going, no matter what resistance comes, what fight comes up within yourself. Find your own authority and honour it. And if you discover that that was arrogance, that you thought was your own authority, good for you, get rid of that layer, go into the next one, go into the next one and the next one. I'm calling for transparency in the non-dual sector. I'm welcoming a discussion and I'd love to be part of it. What I think we have to do is have some system of evaluation of our inner qualities and of our external performance of it. The inner qualities is what is going on in me. Am I continuing to grow? Am I attached to my teachings or the teachings of my teacher? Am I attached to anything here? The position, my work, what am I attached to? Do I have courage to let the whole thing be stripped from me again and again and again? If somebody confronts me, do I say, well, actually, that's your ego? Of course, you can always say that. It's like, well, that's yours and you'll be able to process it. There's a pushback that happens from a lot of teachers. And it's like, take it in and see what's going on for you. So some system of how do other teachers do it? Can I learn from how other teachers assess their own inner qualities and have place for their own shadow? The external performance of a teacher, how to hold the space, how to manage a group, what do you charge, all the logistics of how to manage it, what's good practice, what's not good practice. When is it it doesn't matter if it's freezing cold in here? Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is important that it's freezing cold in the room. You can use everything as a spiritual practice, but to have a clear code of good guidelines for good practice that are not stifling or constricting us, but giving new teachers guidelines of what can be expected. I spent the first 4 or 5 years working completely on donation, completely, and I would go everywhere that I was asked. It was like, well, what do you charge? I don't charge anything. You give me whatever, you figure it out, and you give whatever. And it might get $50, and you might get nothing, and you might get a $5 grand donation. It was just all, and it worked out fine. Everything always works out fine. But that's not appropriate for the Western culture. It's not. The donation system works in other cultures. It's not appropriate here. And I found out if people pay for something, by gum do they invest their attention in it. By gum do they do the work. It's like, oh, money has an entirely different value system here. Things like this, Okay, sorry, it's external performance. And only then, non-duality can be placed in the scheme of things and non-things. What I've tried to do is take, without us being proactive, we have the culture, the ancient culture, we've got the contemporary culture of the market, we have the non-dual teachings themselves working as a spiritual bypass for the teachers as well as the students. We have the dynamic because of the cultures of the guru model and the infallible teacher, that dynamic playing in this ever-perpetuating loop with the student. These and probably other things I just grabbed, what are the key things here that are keeping us stuck and stagnated? So if we do address some of these things, I know that there would be such an opening to go prior to non-duality, that it would be seen as a step and not an end point. And then there can be something more authentic, something freer. Being human is allowed to flourish in a more authentic and honest way that's more appropriate for our culture. So when transparency is added to the culture of non-duality, that which is deeper than the non-dual awakened state can and will be illuminated. I hope. Thank you. Sure, do you want to use the mic?
Yeah.
How are we for time?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, perfect.
Jack, I just want to say how much I'm appreciating your presentation, which I think takes courage. You mentioned about the need for courage among the teachers. I'm recalling, and one of the people I'm about to talk about is sitting in front of me, Scott, you and Jeff Foster, I don't know, was it 3 years ago when you sat in front of a group, and it wasn't a plenary, but it was so valuable, I thought, because they were being very transparent about shadow, about how, awakeness isn't you aren't in the absolute every minute, just really being human and real, and that was so valuable.
Yes.
And then I haven't seen that happen again here since then, and it was just, I'd love to see more of that, and you just pointed the way. Thank you.
I'm calling for it. I'm calling for it. It's like we need to get our act together, actually, and put a shape on this, because it's being shaped by something else, and it's suffering as a result of it. Thank you, Scott, for putting that crack in. Yeah. Here's another crack, hopefully.
So Jack, I love you. I just said, I love you, and I always have. And I just stumbled in here because I wanted to hear what you had to say. I haven't been at the whole conference, and it's like just really refreshing to hear everything you're saying and watching your journey. And I'm just sort of silently nodding my head yes to a lot of what you're saying. In fact, it's like there's no reason for me to speak tomorrow because a lot of what I was going to say you just covered. So thank you. I love you, and keep doing what you're doing, because I think it's where this has to go. It has to go to these places. So thank you.
Thank you for the support. Hey, something isn't happening. Can you please say it all tomorrow again? Keep saying it, because we're changing something. I feel.
Hello, Jack. This is the first time I've ever heard you speak, but I just want to express also my deep appreciation for naming what I sometimes call non-dual fundamentalism, which I'm very cautious even to put those two words together. It feels like a violation of some sacred cow. How could I even put those two words together? And one of the areas that you didn't touch on here where it comes in is the denigration of the devotional path and a lack of recognition that the true devotional path, the prema bhakti, leads to, in my understanding, it leads to non-duality, and then beyond non-duality into the most intimacy with the beloved source of all that is. That's just a way of putting some words on it. But anyway, I just really, really appreciate and welcome more of what you're doing. Thank you.
The gentleman in the corner.
Hi, Jacqueline. I wanted to say thank you so much. 1,000% agreement with everything you're saying. And I wanted to just say how much I feel support for what you're doing. We don't know each other, but I just wanted to say that. And you mentioned that a teacher's performance needs to be somehow rated and acknowledged and graded so people know, like what's going on. And I just want to throw out that one element of that is success rate. I think it should be posted somewhere, like this teacher has had 2 students that have awakened, this teacher's had 30 students that have awakened, and here's what's happened with them, or whatever. And not talking about it, I know a friend of mine who has interviewed several hundred awakened people, and many of them are teachers, and so many of them couldn't even point to one student that had awakened,
Yes.
which is kind of mind-boggling. It's, they've been out there for 10 or 20 years, so what is going on?
Yes. Yeah, my husband has been
What
saying
exactly is
for
going
years,
on?
and I've been like,
You know? Well, I mean, does it work or does it not work? Are we here to do a church, or are we here to make some progress?
there we go.
That's
There we
it,
go.
you
It's
know?
just a normal
Because if a church is
concept.
like, I'm going to keep giving my tithe and believe, and
Yeah.
I'll find out later if this has worked or not,
Yeah.
you know, when
Yeah,
I'm
that's,
dead.
that's
But
real accountability. Because
yeah,
they're
like,
pointing.
does
It's like,
it
okay.
work?
Yeah,
Like, how well did it work? That's
that's right.
because
That's right.
otherwise it's a belief system. So
That's right. Nice one. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I love your message of trust.
Yeah. Thank you.
I work as a psychologist. I love your message, trust your own authority. It's like, that's where we look at. So thank
Yeah.
you, that's just
Yeah,
really
sure.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
teaching,
And-
guidance.
Yeah, and I've come across students that I've said that to trust your own authority, and their own authority has been a conditioned voice from somebody else, and I'm like, okay, you've got to trust it. If that's, and I know they'll fall flat in their face, but the experience of them trusting that voice, they think it's their own. But that has to happen. You're going to get it wrong for ages until you find, oh gosh, there is a knowing. And my mind can stop just for a moment and I can listen.
And energetically you feel it.
Yeah.
And you show the embodiment of it and demonstrate it. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's the danger of going from the neck up
There we go.
instead of from the neck down.
Exactly, from the neck down.
That we have all kinds of awarenesses
Yeah,
that are embodied
yeah,
and energetic.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The lady in the back.
Thank you for your companionship. What's the toughest piece of feedback that you could hear about yourself at this point in your life that would really give you pause?
The toughest piece of feedback. For a long time, I've had this attitude of celebrating tough feedback because I know that the toughest feedback is what makes me grow. I'm very selfish about my own development. It comes before everything, and my work with people is secondary. They get whatever is left. Really, so the toughest feedback. My first thing is it true or is it not true? If it's true, yeah, I got to take it away and I've got a bit of work to do. But I'm celebrating while I'm in the crap place. I'm celebrating because it's like, whoa. And if it's not true, I'm like, well, okay, I can't do anything about it. So it doesn't go in, I won't take it on.
Thank you for answering what you thought I was asking.
Oh, okay.
Can you tell me specifically, can you reveal what the edge of your own shadow is right now that might be stimulated by anything? Where's your edge right now?
My edge right now is when I mentioned that, like literally right now, when I mentioned that, for example, this conference has yet to have a non-dual female speaker on her own up there. Somebody in the staff right here gave me a signal to be quiet. And I went, okay, what am I going to do now? Right, what am I going to do now? So I don't know, it's like, in a way I've been like, shut up. But I'm talking about the absence of courage. So there's this play going on right now in my shadow. It's like, do I actually, like saying, this is the problem. This is the problem. We have to be so polite and so nice, but actually, I'm moving towards putting my head on the block. I actually would be fine about being told never again to come back here. It's that important to me. But it stopped me from naming those other teachers that I told Rick, I'd probably name them, but I didn't name them. I probably would have named them if I didn't get the little slap from the staff member in the group here. I probably would have named them because I would have been given permission, but something in me kind of took the rap on the knuckles. So that's my shadow right now.
Thank you for going there. Yes, thank you, because I'm really working to develop my own authenticity, just to keep dropping into it more and more, and just what a journey that is to just stay present.
moment by moment in my life. And I'm inspired seeing you do the same thing, and I really appreciate the way you answered that question just now, your vulnerability, your transparency, your honesty. That's power from where I'm looking, and I trust that.
I trust it too. And everything else stinks. I can't do it any other way. I can't do it any other way. I just can't.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know? Sure, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been coming to this meeting since it started. I'm very called now. I'm bouncing back and forth between a meeting called Pioneers that's happening on the same weekend. And it's very filled with young, passionate people of color, people of other perspectives who are engaged in the world, but they have a section of indigenous spirituality and spirituality in general. And so these two meetings are indelibly on the same weekend every year.
Wow.
And I'm really curious what you think as someone who's now blowing a hole in this situation a little bit, which is overdue, in my opinion, how to, and also in light of what's going on everywhere around us, in terms of duality and non-duality. Non-duality is the opposite of duality. Turn on the TV, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, blah, blah, blah. What do you have to say about dealing with your own shadow and then somehow walking this walk into the world of that we're facing now? I guess I'll stop there. And there's a push in this conference to bring those people, quote, into the fold. Yeah, more of that. We want more of that. We want more engaged spirituality. We want more people of color. We want more people of other perspectives. Blah blah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why is non-duality a white activity?
Yeah. Seriously.
Why? Like predominantly, you know. I don't know why it is. I don't know why it is.
Curiosity. Keeffe is there, many practices there. There's a lot there that are being practiced
Yes.
throughout. There's the Keeffe system in West Africa, which is spread all over the world. There's many different indigenous practices. I mean, in 2018, there's absolutely no reason not to have this presence here.
Yes.
So it's just curiosity. And so that's to be taken to task.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And for an invitation to go out and for support, for people to be supported and held. It's about time we did the opening and the embracing. You know, it's very cozy, this non-dual scene, you know. A lot of people even join non-dual groups to meet a partner. Like, you know, it's like it's cozy. We're always nice to each other because we're learning about the heart and all this bullshit, like protecting ourselves, keeping it safe. You know, it's like open it up, blast the whole thing open. Put our action, make our action as a result of the inclusivity that we talk about. And I think we can only just do it step by step, but each of us has to do something. It's about people. Each of us has to do something, letting it just up to the organisers, letting it create a stir, make demands. It's very complacent to just sit back and just see, oh, the world's a mess. But, you know, do something about it. For myself, I'm intrigued by how segregated the US is. It's blown my socks off. Really blown my socks. And I live in the South, so it's been like, get right into it, Jack. I'm like, oh my God, what century am I in, you know? For all its faults and purposes, Ireland is much more progressive. Much. Anyway. Politically, what I see is that underbelly that was always there, that I live in now in the South, you know, that game of wanting power, give them power. They have to get power to see what it's like. And let's see what they do with power. You know, let's see. Because if somebody always wants it, it's like, actually, I'll give you your candy. And let's keep eating it until you get sick. You know? So it's like, okay, I think that's what it's about. I think that's what it's about. I don't have any motivation to get up and change it. That's not happening through this forum. But something closer to my heart is my work. And if I can change it through there, you bet I will. I like to rattle things a little bit. Do you know? So let's have the courage to rattle everything. Because the influences that are maybe not so positive are going to shape it unless we take it into our own hands. Let's be more creative. Let's be more influential and make this something where what it preaches is what it practices. And I don't want anything less. I don't want anything less.